What is an argument? How do you build an argument? In the context of debate, an argument is the fundamental building block of persuasion, whereby persuasion is the process or act of influencing another person's belief, attitude, values, and action. An argument is a claim or judgment supported by reasons. It is a statement or group of statements called premises and conclusion. Essentially, an argument is made up of three elements: the claim or proposition, the support or pieces of evidence, and the inference or warrant that connects the support to the claim or proposition. The classic example of a categorical argument is by Aristotle. Here, we've got premise number 1, all humans are mortals, which is stated in the universal sense. Premise 2, which is in a particular sense, Socrates is human, and the conclusion, therefore Socrates is mortal, is founded on the two premises. In our ordinary discourse, the premise and the conclusion are stated in separate sentences, as in this example. So you may claim, any statement about life's origin should be considered as theory, not fact. But you add, in support of that, because no one was present when life first appeared on earth. Arguments may not always be stated in 3 or different sentences. It may be in one sentence. So in this one sentence argument, believing in profound difference between the races is as ridiculous as believing in a flat earth is the conclusion. It is an independent clause, but it needs a justification, a support. So you got here the dependent clause, since it turns out that all humans are descended from a small number of African ancestors in our recent evolutionary past, stands to be the support of that conclusion. Take note that an argument must express a contentious claim or judgment, that is, it's either true or false. As in this case, when you say the earth is round, that is not an argument, that is already established as a fact. But when you say humans can live in Uranus without life support, that is contentious, that is an argument. So what can help you distinguish between a premise and the conclusion in a statement? Look at the indicators. These are examples of premise indicators. And these are some common indicators for a conclusion. Many arguments are simple, but some are quite complex. We need techniques to analyze passages and clarify the relations of premises and conclusions within. Two techniques are common: paraphrase an argument, setting forth its propositions in clear language and logical order, and diagram an argument, exhibiting its structure using spatial relations in 2 dimensions. This example of an argument is easy to analyze, for the conclusion is stated in the first sentence. But for the sake of clarity, cut the argument into several sentences, clarify it, paraphrase it, list each premise, rest the conclusion, simplify the language. So let's analyze and paraphrase this argumentative statement by G.H. Hardy. Archimedes will be remembered when Aeschylus is forgotten, because languages die and mathematical ideas do not. We cut the argument into 7 propositions. First, languages die. Second, the great plays of Aeschylus are in a language. Third, so the work of Aeschylus will eventually die. Fourth, mathematical ideas do not die. Fifth, the great work of Archimedes was with mathematical ideas. Sixth, so the work of Archimedes will not die. And seventh, therefore, Archimedes will be remembered when Aeschylus is forgotten. Sometimes it is useful to diagram an argument to exhibit its structure. To do this, number each proposition in the order in which it appears and then encircle each number. After which, connect these premises with arrows to show their logical relations. Through the technique of diagramming, you are able to identify that the conclusion is the first sentence, while the premises are the second and third. In some arguments, the premises serve their purpose only when combined. How will you diagram this argument? If an action promotes the best interests of everyone concerned and violates no one's rights, then that action is morally acceptable. In at least some cases, active euthanasia promotes the best interests of everyone concerned and violates no one's rights. Therefore, in at least some cases, active euthanasia is morally acceptable. So here we've got a simple structured argument. Here, the premises are joined together because neither premise supports the conclusion independently. If the principle expressed in the first premise were true, but there were no case in which euthanasia promoted everyone's best interest, the conclusion would be given no support at all. And if there were cases in which active euthanasia did promote everyone's best interests, but the principle expressed in the first premise were not true, the conclusion would remain without support. What about this one? Desert mountain tops make good sites for astronomy. Being high, they sit above a portion of the atmosphere, enabling a star's light to reach a telescope without having to swim through the entire depths of the atmosphere. Being dry, the desert is also relatively cloud-free. The merest veil of a haze or cloud can render a sky useless for many astronomical measures. Voila, we've got a complex structured argument here, whereby the second sentence stands to be the first premise, while the third and fourth sentences tend to be the second premise, but they are expressed in two separate sentences. What about this argument? The dominant characteristic of sprawl is that each component of a community, housing, shopping centers, office parks, and civic institutions, is segregated, physically separated from the others, causing the residents of suburbia to spend an inordinate amount of time and money moving from one place to the next. And since nearly everyone drives alone, even sparsely populated area can generate the traffic of a much larger traditional town. Similar to the previous argument, we've got two premises here, second and third sentences, but then again the second sentence is entailed by the first sentence. When a passage contains two or more arguments and a number of propositions whose relations are not obvious, a diagram may prove particularly useful. Here is an interwoven argument, a passage from one of the letters of Karl Marx to Friedrich Engels. To hasten the social revolution in England is the most important object of the International Workingmen's Association. The sole means of hastening it is to make Ireland independent. Hence, the task of the International is everywhere to put the conflict between England and Ireland and in the foreground, and everywhere to side openly with Ireland. Here, the interwoven argument has two parallel premises, sentences 1 and 2, that branch out to two separate conclusions, 3 and 4. What about this one? Because 1. The greatest mitochondrial variations occurred in African people, scientists concluded that 2. They had the longest evolutionary history, indicating 3. A probable African origin for modern humans. This is an example of a chain or cascading argument in which the conclusion is the premise of another conclusion, or the premise of one conclusion is the conclusion of another premise. This is common in arguments of causality, where one cause can be the effect, which is the cause of another effect, so on and so forth.
Wave Beats Music.
Thank you.